We know Maximilien Robespierre as the face of the terror, cold, calculating, the man who sent thousands to the guillotine. But what about his final day? What happens when the executioner becomes the condemned? 24 hours that flipped the French Revolution upside down. One day when the most feared man in France became the hunted. If you value carefully sourced history like this, subscribe. It's the best way to support our work and tell us which city you're listening from. This story is researched and reliable, using original convention records and the official Courtois report. Now, back to the story. July 27th, 1794. 9 a.m. The hall of the National Convention hums as Robespierre climbs to the rostrum. He has a speech. 2 hours of paranoid wandering about enemies and plots. But something is different. His voice cracks. His hands tremble. The man who never showed weakness seems to be coming apart in front of 800 deputies. There is a conspiracy against public liberty, he declares, but he will not name names. He won't say who these conspirators are. Fatal mistake. Every deputy in the chamber hears his own death sentence between the lines. The speech drags on endlessly. Robespierre talks of virtue and corruption, enemies in the shadows, his usual themes, but skipping like a broken record. Deputies shift in their seats. Whispered conversations ripple through the benches. This is not the controlled orator they fear. This is a man unraveling. 11:30 a.m. The speech ends to scattered claps. On a normal day, the room would erupt for Robespierre. Today, the silence cuts like a blade. One by one, deputies rise to tear him apart. Tallien calls him a dictator. Billaud Varennes accuses him of tyranny. The incorruptible is being destroyed by his own. Barrère, once an ally, delivers the coup de grâce. The accuser of all now stands accused himself. The chamber explodes in approval. Robespierre's power base collapses in real time. Men who followed him through months of blood suddenly find their courage. Noon. Robespierre tries to reply, but his voice fails. He literally cannot speak. The man whose words sent thousands to their deaths finds none of his own. "Down with the tyrant!" roars across the hall. The convention votes. Robespierre, his brother Augustin, and 3 close allies are arrested. The decree passes by an overwhelming majority. Only scattered protests from the most devoted Jacobins. Saint-Just rises to defend him, but is shouted into silence. Couthon, paralyzed in his wheelchair, begs for mercy. No one listens. The inner circle of the terror has just become its newest victims. 2 p.m., Paris's commune hears the news. These are Robespierre's people, the municipal government that controls the streets. They refuse the arrest order. They dispatch armed men to snatch him from the Committee of General Security. A civil war brews in the heart of Paris. The rescue comes fast. Commune troops storm the building on the Rue Honoré. They overrun the guards, free Robespierre and his allies before the convention can react. But where do you hide the most recognizable face in France? 3:30 p.m. They take him to City Hall, the Hôtel de Ville, which instantly becomes both fortress and trap. Commune officials barricade the doors, place guards at every entry, but the building sits exposed in the center of Paris. No escape routes. No back door to safety. 5 p.m. Robespierre sits in a shabby office inside City Hall, surrounded by perhaps 200 National Guardsmen loyal to the Commune. Outside, the convention's forces are mobilizing. Thousands of troops, cannon wheels thunder over the cobblestones. The man who once wielded absolute power now depends on an improvised militia. His followers beg him to flee Paris. Boats wait on the Seine. Horses stand ready at the city gates. Robespierre freezes. He cannot decide. The revolutionary who reshaped France stands paralyzed while his world collapses. Why doesn't he run? Pride, say some. Others believe he trusts the people to save him. Most likely, he knows the truth. There is nowhere to go. Every French city has a guillotine. Every mayor knows his face. Flight means a slow death instead of a swift one. 6:30 p.m., the convention's forces encircle City Hall. General Barras commands perhaps 6,000 men. Artillery pieces aim at the main doors, but the gunners hesitate. Inside lie invaluable revolutionary records, 5 years of upheaval on paper. One stray cannonball could erase history. 7:15 p.m., enter François Henriot, commander of the Paris National Guard, Robespierre's most violent supporter, the man who cleared the convention with cannons just a year earlier during the purge of the Girondins. If anyone can save the incorruptible, it's Henriot. But he staggers in drunk, blindingly drunk at the worst possible moment. His troops look at their commander and lose faith. Some slip away into Paris's alleys, others switch sides outright. The Commune's military force bleeds away by the hour. 8:30 p.m. The convention outlaws Robespierre, an ancient legal mechanism that means instant death. No trial. Anyone may kill him on sight. The law he used to crush others now points at his throat. Town criers shout the decree through the districts. Handbills plaster every corner. 15,000 livres for his head, dead or alive. Paris becomes a hunting ground, and Robespierre is the prey. 10 p.m. The first defections hit City Hall. Commune councillors slither out the side doors. Men who swore loyalty hours earlier now fear for their lives. The building empties section by section. Guards abandon their posts. Even the clerks flee with their ledgers. 10:30 p.m. Robespierre writes his last letters. Shaking hands scroll across the page. Messages to his sister Charlotte. Instructions for his dog Bront. Mundane details from a man about to die. He signs each with his full name and title, as if power still flows from his pen. His brother Augustin paces like a caged animal. Saint-Just sits silent in a corner. Couthon prays in his chair. Lebas cleans his pistol. 5 men who once controlled France now wait for death in a cramped office. 12:15 a.m. The convention's troops storm City Hall. Gunfire rips through the corridors. Robespierre hides in a small committee room with maybe 20 diehards. Barricades of desks and chairs won't stop muskets, let alone cannon. The sound rolls through the empty halls, musket volleys, screams, boots on marble floors. The assault comes from 3 directions at once. The Commune's defenders fire a few desperate rounds, then scatter. No discipline, no leadership, no hope. Midnight slips into July 28th. 1 a.m. Lebas puts a bullet through his head. Better to die than be taken. His body collapses onto a mound of papers. Blood soaks revolutionary proclamations and death warrants. The first of the inner circle falls. 1:15 a.m. The doors splinter. Soldiers burst in. Robespierre sits at a table, head in his hands. Some say he tried to shoot himself, and the pistol misfired, shattering his jaw. Others claim a soldier's bullet did it. Either way, the incorruptible is bleeding out on the floor. The truth, most likely a botched suicide. Robespierre was never good with weapons. He lived by words, not guns. The pistol kicks in his inexperienced grip. The ball tears through his lower jaw instead of his brain, leaving him alive but ruined. Augustin Robespierre throws himself from a window, both legs broken but alive. Couthon, the paralyzed deputy, is tumbled down the stairs like a broken doll. Saint-Just surrenders without a fight. The terror's inner circle ends in 15 minutes of violence. 2 a.m. They carry Robespierre on a stretcher through Paris's streets. Blood soaks the makeshift bandages. His jaw dangles loose. The man who drove France into revolution can barely breathe. Crowds gather to spit and curse. Stones fly. The stretcher bearers wedge through narrow alleys. People pour from their homes in the dead of night. News travels faster than fire. Robespierre has fallen. The tyrant bleeds like any other man. Citizens who hid for months suddenly find their courage in the dark. 3:30 a.m. Emergency care in the Tuileries. An army surgeon examines the wound. Jaw shattered in 3 places. Several teeth gone. Tongue nearly severed, but the brain intact. Robespierre will live to see his execution. They cleanse the wound with spirits, stitch the tongue, bind the jaw with strips torn from a tablecloth. Field medicine for a man who once dined off gilded plates. The surgeon works by candlelight while guards watch every move. Dawn, July 28th. They haul him onto a table in the Committee of Public Safety, his own office, where he had signed death orders for months. Now he's the condemned man awaiting execution, jaw wrapped in dingy cloth, one eye swollen shut, breathing through froth and blood. The irony throbs in the air. This very room where he planned the expansion of the terror, where he marked names for death, where he reviewed execution lists with his morning coffee. His desk still holds his papers. His signature sits on dozens of death warrants. 8 a.m. Paris wakes to chaos. Crowds knot on every corner. News runs like gunpowder through the quarter. Robespierre is captured. The leader of the terror has fallen. People dance in the streets, sing forbidden songs, pull out hidden bottles of wine. Bakers open early. Shopkeepers lift their shutters. Citizens emerge from fear like moles to sunlight. The celebration is fragile, though. Brittle, as if speaking too loudly might break the spell. 10:30 a.m. The trial that isn't a trial. Fouquier-Tinville, the public prosecutor, reviews the case. But outlawry means no defense, no witnesses, no appeal, only verification of identity and a sentence of death. The same legal machinery that condemned thousands now runs in reverse. Robespierre cannot speak to defend himself. His jaw is a ruin. He tries to scratch notes, but his hand trembles. Fouquier barely glances at them. Revolutionary justice moves quickly when the architect of the terror stands in the dock. Noon. The tumbril arrives, the same wooden cart that carried Marie Antoinette and thousands of others to the scaffold. They load Robespierre like freight. He cannot sit straight. He has to brace himself against the side rails. The executioner's assistant helps him up almost gently. Professional courtesy among men who deal in death. But Robespierre weighs less than expected. Months of strain have hollowed him out. The terror consumed its maker from within. The crowd is colossal, the biggest gathering in years. Everyone wants to see the fall of the man who terrified them. Women scream curses, men wave bloody rags, children hurl trash. The procession creeps through Paris like a carnival of hate. Death to the tyrant. Down with the dictator. Voices rise from every window and threshold. This is the same crowd that once cheered his speeches. Now they want his blood more than bread. 12:30 p.m. Rue Saint-Honoré. The procession rolls past his old lodgings, the house where he lived for 4 years, wrote speeches, planned purges. Someone flings a pail of pig's blood at the windows. Red streaks trickle like tears. The landlord peeks from behind a curtain. Duplay, the carpenter who once treated Robespierre like a son, who gave him shelter. Revolutionary friendship fades fast when the guillotine calls. 1 p.m. The revolution devours itself. The crowd thickens to a crushing density, perhaps 20,000 bodies packed along the route. Vendors hawk food and drink. Pickpockets work the tight press of bodies. Death draws trade the way honey draws flies. 2:30 p.m. Place de la Révolution. The guillotine waits, the very machine Robespierre helped to perfect. The mob surges around the scaffold. 15,000 throats baying for blood. They haul him up the steps. Executioner Sanson rips away the bandage from his jaw. Robespierre lets out a sound like a dying animal, a raw, tearing shriek that slices through the roar. Then silence. A perfect, icy silence as his head settles into the lunette. An assistant pins his shoulders. Another takes his legs. Efficient, practiced, indifferent. Sanson checks the mechanism one last time. The same ritual performed 1,000 times before. Robespierre's eyes open, clear for the first time in hours. He sees the crowd, the blood-stained platform, the blade poised above. Understanding floods his face. The architect of the terror finally comprehends his place in the machine. The blade falls. The crowd detonates. Sanson lifts the head, and Paris loses its mind with joy. Dancing in the streets, wine pours like water. Church bells ring for the first time since the terror began. Blood pools in the straw, the same straw that drank the lives of his victims for months. The guillotine claims its most famous meal. The man who fed it now feeds it one last time. 3:15 p.m. cleanup begins. Bodies loaded onto carts. Augustin Robespierre, Saint-Just. 22 men die under the afternoon sun. The leadership of the terror erased in a single scorching session. Paris drinks to their demise past midnight. But the story doesn't end at the scaffold. Late afternoon, while crowds celebrate, citizens swarm Robespierre's residence on the Rue Saint-Honoré. They comb through his belongings like carrion birds, hunting souvenirs, hunting secrets. What they find shocks even hardened revolutionaries. First discovery, the famous green coat, the one he wore for every major speech, hanging neat in his wardrobe while Paris bled. People tear it to pieces for keepsakes. Everyone wants a scrap from the tyrant's garment. The coat that terrorized France becomes a tourist trinket. 5:30 p.m. The real treasure hunt begins. Revolutionary officials seal the apartment and start cataloging Robespierre's effects for state confiscation. Standard procedure after an execution. But this inventory sketches the man behind the monster. Books, hundreds of them. Philosophy, law, poetry. Rousseau's works in full, margins crowded with Robespierre's careful hand. Volumes on Roman virtue and ancient republics, the tyrant's mind mapped in underlines and dog ears. 6:15 p.m. They find his dog, Brount, locked in a back room, half-starved, whining at the door. The man who spared no mercy for humans hand-fed his pet each morning. Officials argue the fate of a dictator's dog. Someone suggests execution. Others call it madness. A street sweeper adopts the animal and takes him home that night. Brount vanishes into quiet anonymity, the only living creature to mourn Robespierre. 8:15 p.m. Private papers surface, letters from his sister, Charlotte, shopping lists for household supplies, personal accounts showing careful spending. The public monster lived like a middling clerk. Modest meals, plain furniture, no luxuries beyond books, but deeper inside the drawers, correspondence with provincial officials, reports from local representatives, a web of intelligence spanning France. The incorruptible kept eyes on every department, every district, every influential citizen. The terror watched everyone. 8:30 p.m. The discovery that shocks the room. Citizen Courtois, appointed to investigate Robespierre's papers, locates a secret drawer built into the desk. Invisible unless you know where to press. Inside, documents that rewrite the final act. The infamous list. 137 names, written in Robespierre's precise hand. Deputies marked for immediate arrest and execution. A purge scheduled for July 30th, 3 days after his fall. So vast, it would have eclipsed everything before it. Section 1. Moderates who questioned the pace of the terror. Men like Boissy d'Anglas and Louvet. Survivors of the Girondin purge who learned to keep quiet. Their silence didn't save them from Robespierre's suspicion. Section 2. His own allies. Cold-blooded betrayals in ink. Collot d'Herbois, who helped steer the terror. Billaud Varennes, who backed him in every crisis. Even Barrère, his master of propaganda. The revolution was prepared to eat itself from the head down. Section 3. Administrators, mayors, judges, generals, men who carried out his orders faithfully. Fouquier-Tinville tops the list, the prosecutor who sent thousands to death now slated for his own appointment with the blade. Loyalty meant nothing where paranoia ruled. 9:15 p.m. More papers, drafts of speeches, primed to sway public opinion before the mega-purge. Robespierre planned to blame foreign cabals, Austrian gold corrupting French patriots, British agents corroding revolutionary virtue. The same accusations that greased prior massacres, only this time on a staggering scale. Entire sections of government marked for eradication. Military commanders replaced overnight. Provincial administrations swept clean. France would awake under a personal dictatorship or collapse into civil war. 10 p.m. investigators open his private journal. Daily entries from the last 6 months. Paranoid ramblings about enemies and plots. Everyone suspect. Everyone hiding royalist sympathies. The preacher of virtue sees corruption everywhere. June entries speak of sleepless nights, constant fear of assassination, checking the locks 3 times before bed. The leader of the terror lived terrified by his own creation. Revolutionary justice could strike anyone, even him. The July pages turn out desperate. Wild theories about deputy conspiracies. Plans to denounce half the convention. The final entry bears the date July 26th. Tomorrow I will tell the truth that virtue may triumph, or I will die. A man walking a razor's edge, resolved to cleanse France with blood or be swallowed by it. Midnight approaches. Paris still sings in the streets. Wine gushes from public fountains. Citizens belt out forbidden songs. The end of the terror feels like a national exhale. But by candlelight, the investigators keep working, unearthing plans that would have made everything worse. The picture forming on the table is stark. This was no drift into random slaughter. It was architecture, careful, methodical, scheduled violence, a mechanism prepared to strip the Republic to the studs and rebuild it around a single will. 1 a.m., July 29th. The investigators pieced together the full picture from Robespierre's seized documents. This was no improvisation, no rash paranoia scribbled in the margins. He had drafted a systematic elimination of France's leadership, not random arrests, not piecemeal killings, a complete gutting of the Republic. Every institution hollowed out at once, every leader marked for the blade. The government of France, as it stood, was to be swept away and replaced by a dictatorship of one man. Among the papers, military orders signed and ready. Arrest warrants for 12 generals, men who had won victories against foreign invaders, now condemned as traitors. If carried out, the French army would wake leaderless. Foreign forces massed on the borders would march into chaos. 2:30 a.m. Letters from provincial officials reveal the broader scheme. Instructions in code. Prepare lists of suspicious citizens. Ready the guillotines for mass executions. The terror would spread beyond Paris to every town square. Lyon, already punished brutally for revolt, faced worse. Total depopulation, buildings razed, survivors scattered. The city erased from the map. Revolutionary justice without restraint. Vengeance written into policy. 4:05 a.m. Financial papers expose another collapse. France is bankrupt, bled dry by war abroad and repression at home. Tax collection falters as administrators fear for their lives. The Republic hemorrhages money faster than it prints assignats. Robespierre's solution: confiscate more property from the condemned. Fund the government with legalized theft. Death as economic policy. 4:15 a.m. Personal letters cut deeper. His sister Charlotte pleads for the violence to stop. His brother Augustin writes of private doubts. Even within the circle of the terror, voices question the endless blood. Robespierre grows more isolated, but isolation hardens him. Later drafts show a man resolved. If others falter, He alone will act. Virtue requires sacrifice. France must be purified in blood. The incorruptible becomes utterly unbending. Dawn, July 29th. 24 hours since his arrest. Paris counts its dead and hunts for meaning. The terror has taken 17,000 lives in 14 months. Yet the papers suggest something worse still to come. 5:30 a.m. Final inventory of his possessions. Personal wealth, 873 livres, less than a skilled artisan earns in a year. The man who controlled France's treasury lived poorer than many of his victims. Power without profit, destruction without enrichment. His most valuable belongings. Law books inherited from his father. Revolutionary medals awarded by committees. A silver watch gifted by grateful citizens after his early speeches. The material remains of a life chained to abstract ideals. 7:15 a.m. The investigators finish. Hundreds of documents sealed and catalogued, evidence of a plan that would have destroyed what remained of revolutionary France. The files vanish into government archives, not to resurface for decades, but whispers spread in political circles. Deputies who survived by hours, generals saved by chance. France had stepped back from the brink by pure accident, a misfired pistol and 20 minutes of combat. 7:30 a.m. The wider truth sinks in. Robespierre's death did not end the terror by popular revolt or military coup. It ended by chance. Sheer luck prevented the final purge. One failed suicide attempt. A brief delay in the storming of City Hall. Without those, France would have descended into slaughter, collapse, and foreign conquest. The revolution would have burned itself alive. 3 days later, investigators unlock one last secret. Hidden in his desk, architectural plans to expand the guillotine's operation. Multiple execution sites across Paris, steam-driven blades for faster killing, industrialized death at a scale the world had never seen. The man who once preached virtue had prepared to mechanize terror itself. If you value historically documented stories like this, subscribe. It's the best way to support our work and tell us from which city you're watching. This script is based on Courtois' official report and National Archives, bringing the final hours of Robespierre back to life.